Yes, and of course, we'll be joining in for our first discussion or plenary session this morning. But not only that, we have a wide range of activities and of course agenda. So don't forget to check our website for the whole and of course the complete guide as well. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on and begin our first plenary session of the conference titled Past, Present and Future, Building ASEAN from the Ground Up. Please give a round of applause, yes? As we are to begin our first session, of course, a wonderful and of course insightful discussion. So without further ado, to begin and of course to lead the discussion, I would like to invite our moderator, Dr. Renata Komovadin, News Director at The Standard, to come up onto the stage. Please give a round of applause.
Selamat datang. สวัสดีค่ะ Very good morning to distinguished guests and everyone joining us. I'm so pleased to be in very upbeat atmosphere today at this conference. And before I begin, I'd like to just introduce, because today is about ASEAN and it's all about ASEAN people. We are 667 million citizens of this region. And today's conference is the ASEAN for People Conference, the first of its kind to amplify the voices of ASEAN. But through many decades, the diplomacy has begun, and it's all about ASEAN. But the real promise of ASEAN and people identity, it's still in the question, because the vast majority of ASEAN hasn't embraced through ASEAN identity. And the promise made in 2015 of people-centered community is still the reality that it's in question. And nowadays, we are facing so many tough situations like geopolitics, rivalry of superpower, economic uncertainty. And internally, ASEAN is also facing crises like Myanmar and the South China Sea, and how we would deal with all the situation. And that's the center of our discussion today, in which how could we tackle all the situation, but to remain the true sense of ASEAN identity, having people at the center of the community. So today, our panel discussion, I would like to invite our panelists to be joining me on the stage. The first one, Your Excellency Dr. Marty Natalegawa, author of Does ASEAN Matter? A View from Within. He was former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Indonesia. Please have a seat. And today we will hear his evaluation of honest assessment of people-centered ASEAN. Next, Datuk Professor Dr. Mohit Faiz Abdullah, Chairman of the Institute of Strategic International Studies, ISIS, Malaysia. Next, I'd like to invite Khun Pitha Limcharan-Rat, Visiting Fellow of Harvard Kennedy School, Member of the Parliament. He will be representative of Young Voice today and to show how the power of youth can empower ASEAN. Last but not least, I'd like to invite Dr. William Sabanda, Special Envoy of the Secretary General of ASEAN. He was very active in helping Myanmar during 2009 to 2011. Hi, Dr. Sabanda. Thank you very much. It's very honored for me to moderate and to guide this discussion. Let me begin with Dr. Natalegawa, because you were a renowned career diplomat. You were Foreign Minister of Indonesia. You have so abundant experience. And from the journey of ASEAN, ASEAN has been praised in terms of contribution to peace and stability in the region. But on the other hand, what's your assessment of big wins of ASEAN? Is that for diplomats or for the people? And to what extent people really take part in that journey of ASEAN?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed for having me in this forum. And of course to Padino, we are always in awe with all your initiatives and your important contributions. I'm fortunate in a way in speaking after listening to Padino's remarks as well as that of the Secretary General because much of what I had wanted to say had been said. Suffice perhaps to say that the first point is that indeed ASEAN has made tremendous contribution without doubt in terms of creating peace among the Southeast Asian countries, in terms of securing for Southeast Asia a better place within the wider geopolitical context, and not least of all in terms of the economic transformation that ASEAN has enabled our region to enjoy. You need only to look and compare the fate of Southeast Asia with ASEAN, for instance, to other sub-regions in the world. Northeast Asia, for instance, despite its tremendous wealth and growth, at the same time, because it lacks any regional process, we are still seeing trust deficit and tensions and real prospect of open conflict in contrast to Southeast Asia. The question, I think, is what of the people? Because the Secretary General has been very consistent and Padino has been very eloquent in underscoring is the people dimension that we need to try to secure and ensure. And I must say that in terms of rhetorics, in terms of official statements, there's certainly been no lack of acknowledgement of the importance of the people dimension in ASEAN. And as Secretary General has said, all the goals and achievements that ASEAN has made have been of tremendous impact to its people. But I do feel that there is still room for more enhanced sense of ownership and participation of the peoples of ASEAN in the ASEAN project. How do you, normally when we talk about ASEAN centrality, we speak of centrality as being a geopolitical issue. How ASEAN can maintain its relevance or navigate geopolitical push and pull. But in my view, that ultimately, centrality is about ASEAN's relevance to its own peoples in terms of impact. To what extent the existence of ASEAN has made an impact on the daily lives of its ordinary citizens. But not least of all, I think, in terms of participation, to what extent the modalities, the institutions, and the working methods of ASEAN has been sufficiently open and democratic to allow for the participation of the people. And I think this conference will be extremely important in informing us where the areas of enhanced engagement with the people can take place. In other words, therefore, yes, we have made great strides, made important achievements, but I think the time has come for a bit more focus, a bit more purposeful engagement of the people in the process. And this is something that cannot be legislated. It can't simply occur because of the adoption of some documents, visions, or declarations. It is a process of nurturing and engagement to ensure that we are fit for purpose, an ASEAN that is truly people-centered. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Natalie Galva. Datuk Abdullah, you have been familiar, like top strategists of ASEAN, you've been familiar with the structure of ASEAN in terms of having meetings, forums, declarations. I myself, as a journalist, have to cover meetings of ASEAN, a series of it, like hundreds in each year. But is that truly a real channel of communications between ASEAN and people, especially civil society? What should be to improve communication between ASEAN governments and the civil society?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I have really prepared a set answer. But the moment I stepped into the hall and I could feel the vibes of the youth, I realized that the answers that I prepared would not be suitable for the kind of samangat and the spirit that we have here. So I'd like to thank Pak Dino, really Shabas, Tania, fantastic job you have done. I want to specifically mention, Pak Dino mentioned about what at the end of the day, when we are traveling from one place to another within ASEAN, do we identify as Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar, Indonesian, or we identify as ASEAN? I think when that comes, your dream, our dream will be realized. I'm pretty sure about that. So that partly answers your question about we have all the institutions, we have the entities. I think all of us who are familiar in the game know that the entities are there. But what is really lacking is the spirit. If the spirit is there, then the rest will fill in. The logistics is there, we are capable. Within ASEAN, you know, we are already number 5, going to be number 4 very soon, the biggest, very soon number 3 even, economic bloc. The GDP is there collectively. So there is no reason why, as an entity, as a group, ASEAN should be at the main table with the rest of the superpowers. And this is where our test is. I believe that if this goes on, and I think your message should be carried right, not just here. Of course, Indonesia has what we call the critical mass. You've got exponential growth, you've got the numbers, and when you hit the right button, it spreads. So I think this is the kind of formula that we need to multiply back in the Philippines, back in Malaysia, back in other places. So my simple answer to that question is this. We have the East Asia Summit, huge. We have, in fact, so many CSOs. We have, of course, I myself am a so-called, quote-unquote, eminent member of the ASEAN Regional Forum. But that's not good enough, because we are going there and speaking a rather bureaucratic, formal language. That should not be the language of ASEAN. And I'm not talking about linguistic issue. I'm talking about the tone and the spirit of what we say. So I think I won't be doing justice if I were to go on naming the particular areas. But my answer to you is this. If we have this kind of spirit with the existing logistics and the entities we have, we will be able to get this communication that you're referring to right across. And that is a message I would like to convey following from an event like this. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Datuk Abdullah. Kun Pitha, you are representative of Young Voice of ASEAN. You are a member of the Parliament of Thailand. And I can see here that young people in Indonesia know you a lot. They come to ask to take photo with you. But for ASEAN, especially young people, probably ASEAN appear as old-fashioned club still. So what would you reckon as a young voice? What should be 1 or 2 simple steps of ASEAN to be, hey, for young people that ASEAN is finally okay for us?
2 steps. One is relevancy. Second is credibility. To build up on Pak Dino's presentation on centrality and unity. That's our past achievement. But going forward, relevancy and credibility of ASEAN is the most important thing that you can connect with the disconnected youth and the perception of elite-driven ASEAN. When I won the election, When I won the election back in 2023, 2023 was the year that a lot of ASEAN leaders started to become young. Lee Hsien Loong becomes Lawrence Wong, Duterte becomes Marcos, and things like that. So we became young in 2023. I was sitting in a room with a foreign policy advocate, Fuwadi Pitsuwan, which is the son of the late section of ASEAN. I was asking him, what's the ASEAN quick wins? If I were the prime minister, and if I were to meet Lawrence Wong and Marcos and President Prabowo and things like that, the 5 founding members of ASEAN, let's come up with ASEAN quick wins that are highly relevant to the youth and comparatively low resistance. I came up with 3. What keeps ASEAN youth awake at night? That is common throughout the 10 countries. 1, Clean Air Accord. The transboundary haze that affects majority of the countries in ASEAN. Yes, some relatively resistance from agricultural companies, but if we work with them, the quality of the air in Jakarta, in Bangkok, and things like that. In Singapore, they have their own Clean Air Act. In Thailand, we're about to pass a Clean Air Act. But if it's from our neighboring countries burning agricultural crops, there's no boundary for clean air, right? Second, cybersecurity, how to combat scam operation. It affects you in Singapore, in Brunei, in Bangkok, in Jakarta, and that's something that it's an institutional quick win, an ASEAN quick win for us. And third is task force on Coast Guard maritime, something that we stick together in times of when the hedging space is shrinking, but the rising friction in maritime is happening in various countries. These are the quick wins that you turn communique into concrete actions, and then you become relevant again. Credibility, the second thing. Maybe it's time that we turn the 5-point consensus into a 5-year roadmap on the situation in Myanmar, showing that we understand humanitarian without interfering in sovereignty of another country. Time to reform the secretariat with the budget, with the mandate that is more than what it has been in the past. Because we want to be able to see ASEAN in the next 60 years as centrality, unity, relevancy, and credibility. And that's when ASEAN matters to the youth.
Thank you, Kun Pitha. That's 5 points of relevancy of ASEAN to the youth. Let me move on to Dr. Sabanda. Dr. Sabanda, you worked quite hard, especially during Cyclone Nargis, the aftermath of it in 2009 to 2011 for 2 years. And you must be very involved with how civil society contribution to disaster or to the problem of ASEAN. But from your observation, what is the key missing link between ASEAN and people? And how should ASEAN do more in order to reach out to frontline people?
Thank you. The key missing link is actually the people of ASEAN. The people is still the narrative in the ASEAN dialogue today. ASEAN is still very much intergovernmental institution. It's a state-first institution. And number one, what is need to be done is actually the transformation of ASEAN. If ASEAN wants to be a truly people-centered, the first things needs to be done is a transformation of ASEAN. And I appreciate Pak Dino because this is the beginning, but I think this is just the start of the long process of accommodating the institution of people in the institution of ASEAN. So ASEAN really need a transformations. There should be a permanent mechanism in ASEAN to accommodate the people voices. So what needs to be done is actually if in every ASEAN meeting, ASEAN summit, there is a mechanisms to accommodate the voices of ASEAN people, and then that is actually the beginning of bringing ASEAN close to the people. The second one, and this is I traveled from Singapore yesterday. I changed my, I need the local currency, and I buy Singaporean dollars. And I realized I lose 100,000 rupiahs by transactions through the ATM in Singapore. It's 8 Singaporean dollar. The transaction cost in ASEAN is very high. And this is actually, if you want to bring ASEAN close to the people, you really needs to reduce the transaction cost among the people of ASEAN. We transaction between ASEAN and the United States. It's cheaper than we transact between ASEAN, among ASEAN countries. And this is I think the breakthrough that ASEAN can do. If the currency system, the digital payment systems, this is 90% of people of ASEAN are actually using internet. How many of you in the building now is using smartphone? I think all of us using smartphone. And the very simple thing is actually with the QR code, yeah, now is ASEAN is facilitating. If I can use my rupiah, do the payment system in Thailand, in Baht, and then you can actually reduce the transaction cost. And this is for me is a quick win. If ASEAN want to do real ASEAN people, do the transaction cost very simple, very easy by do interoperability in the digital payment system. Number 3, you can only do this if you have a strong ASEAN Secretariat. We pay with our tax. It's very expensive things, ASEAN Secretariat, but they are doing administrative work. ASEAN Secretary General needs to be the CEO of ASEAN. They operate ASEAN. They control the program of ASEAN and make ASEAN effective. How ASEAN can really translate the program to make ASEAN people is reality. So this is the transformation, institutional transformation, organizational transformation, and economy people transformation. Those 3 things.
Thank you, Dr. Sabanda. Oh, I just see the note that I have to start Q&A session, but I just have a series of questions that I like to ask you. But we can begin with our Q&A session now. If anyone would like to ask question, please introduce your name and affiliation. Who would like to go first? I see the hands up. Yeah. Can the staff take the microphone?
Just one round, too short. You should have like 2 rounds.
Okay, I'll open up this floor for this question, and then I'll get back to the second round of discussion. Who would like to ask question, please come to the microphone. Yes. I see a long queue of questions here. Yes, one person, one panelist for one question, please, because our time is limited.
Thank you very much. I am Andreas from Manado, North Sulawesi. My question is regarding, I want to ask the panelists, what are their views of a shared currency in ASEAN to improve economy, like euro in Europe? So what do you think about the shared currency in ASEAN? Thank you.
This question is for any panelist?
Any panelist?
Every panelist?
Maybe Mr. Sabanda, because he mentioned about digital payments. So I want to ask about what you think about a shared currency in ASEAN, similar to the euro in Europe. Thank you.
Okay, one question for Mr. Sabanda. And the next 3 questions have to be for other panelists.
Okay, good morning, Excellencies. My question will be for Mr. Natalagawa. Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Farhan Pratomo, and I'm a final year student of International Relations in Universitas Airlangga. And I'm also now a research assistant for the Center for Strategic and Global Studies, a think tank for our department, IR department at Surabaya. And my questions will be about the future of ASEAN. So you know that the ASEAN is having a rough time right now. Like example, we see the current Trump tariffs on a lot of countries in Southeast Asia, and then the, internal issues in Southeast Asia, like example, the Myanmar conflict and the recent Cambodian and Thailand border clash, and a lot of it, and even we want to mention the South China Sea is one of the problem. Do you still believe that the future of ASEAN will be bright, or would it be a kind of dark in the future because, we saw a lot of great power rivals and others? Maybe that's it. That's it all. Thank you.
Thank you. The question for Dr. Natalagawa on the future of ASEAN. Third one, please.
It's my turn. I'm so sorry. I thought nobody was at the microphone, so I thought I'd ask a question. I want to ask a question of Kun Peter. The question is whether we need an ASEAN parliament or a young person's parliament, say below 35. There is, of course, an ASEAN interparliamentary organization, but there's no direct election for parliaments of ASEAN compared to, say, Europe. And the young voice, there's no permanent forum for it, except, of course, this wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tay. And one last question for Datuk Abdullah, please. Yes.
Hello, my name is Joel Christoph. I'm a fellow at Area and Harvard Kennedy School. My question is your advice. So for young people that want to measure the success in building ASEAN from the ground up, what should young people be paying attention to? How do we measure success?
Okay, thank you for this round of questions. So let's begin with Dr. Sabanda in terms of shared currency of ASEAN.
I disagree with ASEAN having a single currency like Euro. And it's a problem in Euro at the moment. ASEAN, and this is the way ASEAN is doing right now, it's a correct one, by recognizing the dignity of every country, of every single currency. And the QR system mechanism that's being introduced is actually, it's a very simple cross-border transactions that can be developed. If, in my case, like I mentioned, I pull the money from the ATM, the transaction cost is 8%. By QR, you can actually bring down the transaction cost to 0.5%. And that's make the transaction across people. In Indonesia, for example, you use the QR code, it's actually empowering 66 million MSMEs. They use it, and this is a very simple transaction used by the people. Now you see the the Singaporean tourists go to the Thailand, they can use the QR transaction easily to transact the economy. And this is the way how the ASEAN currency ecosystem needs to be paid, using the QR system, using the digital payment ecosystem, and this is really empower all sectors economy. You can actually bring tourism up, you can bring SMEC up, and this is the way I see, through people economy, you can bring down ASEAN to the people. So this is the way ASEAN needs to develop. I will advocate ASEAN economy through the digital ecosystem payment system across ASEAN.
Thank you, Dr. Sabanda. Dr. Natalagawa, how do you see the future of ASEAN amidst so many conflicts, many internal situations?
Well, it is quite easy for one to become somewhat pessimistic at this time, because when we look at our region within Southeast Asia, we can quite readily identify so many challenges, whether it be intra-strait between Southeast Asian countries, or whether it be within Southeast Asian countries. And then, of course, we have beyond Southeast Asia problems, the South China Sea, the geopolitical push and pull. In other words, it's quite, one can readily identify problems. But at the same time, I am of sufficient vintage in terms of ASEAN to recall that obituary on ASEAN has been written many, many times before. There have been many occasions in the past when analysts and even ourselves, we question whether ASEAN can continue. And voices and expression of pessimism predominate. But almost on each of those occasions, ASEAN proven the doubters wrong. We managed to transform and reinvent ourselves. And I believe the current juncture is equally the case. It is not impossible for ASEAN to overcome and to emerge stronger from the current issues, challenges. Because some of the most productive and transformative period of ASEAN's development has been precisely when we encounter problems. ASEAN financial crisis, 1998, the political implosions in many of our countries, for instance, they were the propellant for ASEAN transformation. But it requires, first and foremost, I think, a recognition by ourselves that we are at a key juncture, that we cannot be business as usual, that we are not in denial, as if everything is rosy, and then we just go on in our regular routine fashion. We need to be brutally honest in identifying our shortcomings and identifying solutions for the future. And in this room full of young people, it is for them, most of all, to be able to assert their voice and to claim their relevance. But again, as I said, we have had such moments before in the past, and I'm not pessimistic that we can once again emerge stronger as a result of the current, in the face of the current situation. And perhaps just very quickly, because it relates very much to the last question, how we measure success, looking from the ground up. I think basically process and outcome. I think success, people-centered ASEAN, one measurement of success would be participation. To what extent are the modalities of ASEAN enabling young people and the people of ASEAN to take part in the decision making? And the second is in terms of impact. To what extent ASEAN policies make a difference to the ordinary citizens in ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Datuk Kunpita, your question about what's the possibility of having ASEAN Parliament?
I think I can take two questions at the same time that is related to youth. To your question, sir, yes and no. And I'm not being a politician here, I'm being Singaporean, I'm being pragmatic. Yes, if substance over form. No, if form over substance. So when I was inside the parliament, there's three forms, three assemblies that you can participate. One is called IPU, International Parliamentarian Union in Geneva. Second is IPA, is Asia-Pacific related. ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights. That's on top of my head. Three forms, three assemblies that you can actually, relate or talk to people from PAP or Workers' Party or from any other ASEAN countries. But I feel like if you want it to matter and deliver results with some KPI as per the gentleman's question, it has to be substance over form, meaning you really had to think about concrete steps of what you are trying to accomplish for your meeting as young parliamentarians. if it's really about being the big goal of being a responsible middle power, amid the great power rivalry, coming October 26th to 28th, President Trump is coming to ASEAN Summit. And if you think about connectivity, if you think about environment and climate change, then quantify it. I mean, if you're talking about connectivity, and we talk about rail all the time, rail transportation as a mode of transportation for logistics and stuff like that. Per 100,000 kilometers in Europe, there's a rail coverage of 40 kilometers. That's how you measure connectivity and also the coverage. In ASEAN, it's 11. So Europe 40, ASEAN 11. So if you are parliamentarians passing laws trying to improve connectivity and transportation, make it half of Europe, make it 20 within 2045 or something like that. So if it's concrete, it's relevant, that's something that the youth will realize that being part of ASEAN has more benefit rather than the cost of being one.
Thank you. Datuk Abdullah, the question to you is how to build ASEAN from the ground up. What do you reckon?
Yes, I got it. I'm just waiting to answer that question. Just give me a moment. This is very stuffy, yeah? Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I've just been waiting for like 50 years to answer that question. I'll tell you what. I'll begin with a quote from a great song, from a great movie. Some of you might not remember. It's Romeo and Juliet. And in the song, the question is, what is a youth? Impetuous fire. What is a maid? Eyes and desire that the world has on. A rose will bloom, it then will fade. So does the youth, and even the fairest maid. So I'm telling you guys, keep your youth and don't grow up. That is the first question. Of course, there are some three serious issues here. Having kept the youth, the second part, I think the most important is that for ASEAN, you can't, and nobody else can do it better than you guys, is to talk to each other. Reach out to your friends in Malaysia, in Singapore, from Indonesia, to Thailand, to Myanmar, everywhere within ASEAN. You continue this reaching out, I seriously believe that half the battle is won through all the stuff that we have. We don't have it right. Once you have it, that will be. I remember back in the 70s, I'm giving you my age now, when I was the way you are, sitting here, I would always be the first to say, you are talking too much. Let's hear what we have to say. And I think this is what you need to do. Do you agree? Yes or no? Number 3, and I think this is the most important. It is the youth that you must make sure and you keep your leaders in check. It's not just for the elections that you have to vote for them. Every month, every part of the year, every quarter, you tell your leaders, we don't think you're doing the right thing. You should do it this way, that way. We don't want to listen to your explanations. We want you to follow what we do, because youth is the prime time where you chart the course ahead of you. And that you will determine your own very future. Thank you very much.
That's quite a tall order. Don't grow up and stay as being youth. So the whole audience has to listen to you. I do apologize for my misunderstanding of the flow of the conversation. So I'd like to get back to the panelists to amplify your point in terms of solving the problems of ASEAN, especially ASEAN mechanism. So I'd like to get back to Dr. Natalegawa and Datuk Abdullah. Because talking about ASEAN, there is certain mechanism, but the problem or the situation about real engaging with civil society organization is still in question. And the registered CSOs in ASEAN, probably the number is still very tiny. So what would you reckon in terms of institutional reform of ASEAN to address and to engage more with CSOs of ASEAN? Dr. Natalegawa.
Well, I do believe that the current setup is a little bit ad hoc in nature, in the sense that occasionally on an annual basis probably there is so-called consultation, engagement with the representative of the youth, of the social CSOs, or parliamentary members as well. But I feel that the engagement, people-centered engagement, must be made more mainstream and in a way even more formal in the way that ASEAN conducts itself, so that it's not simply an afterthought or an addition to some summit gathering where there is an interaction with the youth and the peoples of ASEAN, CSOs, but all throughout the decision-making process, there must be a consistent and continuous process of engagement so that there is not a gap between what the officialdom are carrying out in relation to the expectations and aspirations of the people. Of course, ASEAN is not a supranational organization. It is intergovernmental one. Having said that, the ASEAN Charter speaks, when the leaders sign on to the ASEAN Charter, they use the term "we the peoples," admittedly of ASEAN member states. But still, it is clear that it must be a people-centered endeavor. And institution-wise, there is plenty of room and space for further enhancement. But I do feel, in a way, this is a space that the people of ASEAN themselves must try to assert. They cannot simply be passive and await the allowance by the leaders and official processes for them to engage. Because in some instances, in the case of the digital economy, for instance, or even when we have had some social internal tensions in our regions, the peoples of ASEAN have actually outpaced the official processes. They have interacted with or without any official channels or official frameworks or agreements, because nowadays the digital economy and connectivity enable them to be connected. So I think, yes, on the one hand, we can tinker and we can enhance the modality, the institutions, but at the same time, I think the peoples of ASEAN must not be remiss of the power that they have in their own hands to earn and to occupy that space. Because if we start defining people-centered processes as anything that the officials can simply bequeath or offer, then you have already an unequal type of relationship between the two. But yes, the institutional decision-making must be enhanced.
You also mentioned mainstreaming civil society. What's the mechanism, or what should be the new mechanism of ASEAN to pave the way for more engagement with civil society?
First and foremost, I would assume, if we assume nearer to a perfect world than is at the present, where the government themselves represent the peoples of their respective countries, then obviously we need to empower that process. As Faiz said earlier, the people of ASEAN, through their own respective governments, must voice their concerns and their views. And I think nothing motivates a politician in an open elected democracy than the recognition that the people expect expect certain standards and certain policies. So working through their respective national modalities is obviously key. And at the same time, working purposefully between the CSOs themselves to inform themselves. The point that Pa Dino earlier said, when he said about how many of these CSOs are not even aware of one another's existence, of the work that they are already undertaking. Just to connect between them will give them a sense that they are not on their own and they can make the case. And nowadays, when I see, again, internal social political upheavals in one of our countries, it amazes me how the citizens of the other ASEAN member states, with or without fancy declarations, they connect, they express solidarity through all the modalities that they have. This is true people power in a regional sense. That's why sometimes I'm a little bit, when I was still in office, when people talk about how we can engage the civil society, etc., I feel a little bit, there's some reticence. On the one hand, wanting to create that space, but on the other hand, wanting to avoid the impression that civil society can only be empowered with the liberty and with the agreement of governments. I think there is enough capacity amidst yourself to connect in the way that this conference is enabling. Thank you.
Thank you. Datuk Abdullah, what do you reckon in terms of institutional reform? Should it happen naturally or should it be paved the way by government of ASEAN?
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, I wholeheartedly agree with my colleague, Pak Mati. We have had several sessions together, and I think our views are very consistent. But in addition to that, in addition to that, I think there are a few things that we should look into. I think number one, I think the key word I would like to use is, quote unquote, number one, centralize, number two, rationalize, number three, institutionalize. By centralize, I do not mean centralization of power. By centralize, I mean cohesiveness. Doing things together. Saying things together. You don't have to be uniform. You say things to reach a common objective. That is very important. That is why there's been a lot of problem, a lot of criticism about the problem with this so-called consensus. Consensus could be a bane, it could be a boon. It could be a real pain. It could be really holding things up. But at the same time, you need consensus to make sure that everyone, or at least most of the people, are happy with the decision taken and the words that are said. So that's why there's some suggestion, maybe consensus plus or minus one, or minus X, as they say. Not 100% must agree to it. Or at least more, or a super majority agrees to it, then you go by it. I think it's one of the serious problems if you were to attend ASEAN meetings. You can't come up with a clear statement because there's no 100% consensus on the statement. That holds things back. At the same time, it helps to, keep things from getting out of control. So this is number one. Cohesion in what you do, in what you say, with the view of getting the common objective. Number two, I was talking about rationalization. Seriously, I just had a meeting about 3 weeks ago with a former Secretary General, and he was telling me that those days they had like hundreds of meetings. And guess what do they have now? They're in the thousands. Something is seriously wrong there. If you cannot fix your meeting and you have to have 10, 20, you're not doing the right thing. So rationalize on that, get that act together. That is a process-driven reform. People say, you don't be too obsessed. Why are you so process-driven and not output-driven? My answer, to get your proper output, you need to get the proper process. Not an obsession, get it properly done. So that's number two. Number three, finally, we need great institutionalization of the things that we have. Do away with things which are not functioning. ASEAN-led mechanisms must function. We have always been saying that ASEAN is a great convener, can catch on to all the major ones in the world. But if your own mechanisms are not fulfilling the objectives they're supposed to fulfill, then you have to cut it down. Cut it down in a way that it becomes easier to manage and greater objectives will be reached. So to answer that basic question, third one requires innovation, and innovation requires youth. Basically, that's what it is. Thank you very much. Yes.
Another order from Datuk Abdullah to the youth of ASEAN. Dr. Sabanda, you involved very much in helping the situation of Myanmar after Cyclone Nargis, and you must have seen the power of people on the ground, power of civil society. But for ASEAN mechanism, how should they engage and think of civil society for the first hand rather than being afterthought after the crisis happened? What do you reckon?
There might be one model of ASEAN-led mechanisms. That time, 140,000 people died, 7.5 million people lost the opportunity. The scale of disasters is like the tsunami, the Indian Ocean tsunami. And ASEAN was pushed out of their comfort zone. There was a foreign minister meeting in Singapore and decided ASEAN to push Myanmar government to accept the openness. And this mechanism actually gives three benefits. One, open access of Myanmar to the international support coming in to help the people. The second one is facilitating the coordination among government, international community. But the third one is the most important, building trust of ASEAN across the people of ASEAN. You are in the ground. I was actually, at that time, building the office in Myanmar, the first office of ASEAN out of Jakarta. We built the 4 different local office, and ASEAN is on the ground, helping people, talk to the people. And this is, for me, is when ASEAN wants to be the people center, ASEAN needs to be on the ground. So ASEAN-led mechanism for me is ASEAN is on the ground. ASEAN needs to be creating a system, mechanism, talking directly with the people. The diplomat needs to talk directly with the people. You need to create an ASEAN center, an ASEAN people center in your own country and talk to the people, like this. I imagine if this kind of network be built in every ASEAN nations, and then allow ASEAN, allow Secretary General, allow diplomats to talk to the people, that would be a good mechanism. And that would be the good way to build trust between ASEAN, intergovernmental society, and the people. And this is, I think, the benefit that ASEAN can be. People will know, people will put ASEAN flags. How many of you can sing ASEAN anthem? I don't think very few people in the room can sing ASEAN anthem. But if you bring flag of ASEAN in the people, then everybody can sing ASEAN anthem. So for me, it's very easy for me. If everybody in ASEAN can sing ASEAN anthem, that is ASEAN people is being created. Thank you.
That's one crucial measure to test ASEAN identity. Kun Pitha, the money is really crucial to sustain the work of civil organization. But as of now, we can see how big donors cut the budget, like the example of US aid in Thailand. What's your recommendation for the youth in working to be more having access, or for organization to provide more funding to civil society, or how should they work to be more self-reliant, to be sustainable?
2 things I've seen, the micro and macro. Micro is that I've seen a lot of CSO in Thailand have become more efficient through technology, through a lot of use of artificial intelligence, through a lot of comparative best practices from one another. Second, macro, I'm starting to see the Asian way, the Asian human rights definition. We started to see that democracy and human rights is not just a foreign import, it's a lived experience. So we are starting to see a lot coming from East Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan also, and also from ASEAN neighbors like Indonesia coming to Thailand and things like that, to fill up that vacuum because you have to understand this is Asia in the world with no rules. When other parts of the world are too divided or too distracted, Asia must step up. And that's how you manage to survive these important times. 2,700 kilometers along the border of Myanmar, 700 along with the Cambodians. So without any Western leadership during this tough time, it's a vacuum. So definitely people have to work smarter, and Asia within our own collective effort must also step up.
So it means CSO in ASEAN have to attract funding from other organizations or from funder in the
And
region.
also become lean themselves. They also have to be a lean management of CSO. So you might have to work with half of the fund that you get. But because of the new technology that is coming up, the ability to partner with one another, so you could synergize and survive this tough time. But I understand for the fact that there are some assistance coming within the Asia, not just from the outside, because you mentioned USAID, for example. So a lot of people are stepping up.
Yes. Thank you very much. Our honored 4 speakers today, they have given us their thought, their wisdom, their experience for ASEAN mechanism to really reach out and engage more with civil society. Of course, it's the promising that we all need to work together to reach that promise of ASEAN identity. Thank you very much, Dr. Natalie Gawa, Datuk Abdullah Kunpita, and Dr. Sabanda. Thank you very much. I'd like to return the stage to the MC.
Thank you very much, and give a round of applause as well to our moderator for moderating such a wonderful session, and of course to our panelists as well. And I kindly invite to the moderator and of course the panelists to please take a position on the center stage. For next, we will hand out a token of appreciation. Therefore, we'd like to invite onto the stage Dr. Dinopati Jalal to please present a token of appreciation for all the moderators and of course the panelists for our first session of the conference, Past, Present, and Future, Building ASEAN from the Ground Up. Please give a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panelists for our first session. Thank you, Dr. Marty Natalegawa, Dr. Prof. Muhammad Faiz Abdullah, Mr. Pita Limranurat, and Dr. William Sabandar. And of course, thank you to our moderator, Dr. Nata Komovaldin, for moderating and leading such an insightful discussion. And we invite to take please a photo session, a photo opportunity first on stage. And you may hold the FPCI jacket for our first photo session.